Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Joshino and today I'm going to be doing a Post Auraxium review of the Razor GD-23. The GD-23 boasts that it is the NC carbine, that it will give you control and competitiveness at further ranges. But does it live up to that bold statement? Stay with me to find out. So I Auraxiumed the GD-23 Razor fairly fast actually. In the second half, I'd used the first half of the Auraxium a long time ago and I came back to it because I thought, well, I've only got one weapon away from the NC directive weapon, the Fortuna, so let's get ahead and do it. And I ended with about 100 kills per hour, which is quite good and quite fast. However, don't let that fool you. The desire to finish fast and to get to that final Auraxium for the Fortuna was what really drove me to be so aggressive with the weapon and try and get so many kills. And realistically, it isn't my favourite gun, and I'm going to go over the reasons why, and someone who's used it enough to get the Auraxium. So, my personal gripe with long-range carbines is that they don't really work that well, and especially with my quite aggressive playstyle. The only time they really work out is when you climb up above a place that's only really accessible by light assaults unless you get a squad beacon, so somewhere like those radio towers you see at some of the bases, or rocks that you just can't really climb as a non-LA. But if you do actually want to take enemies on at longer ranges, the damage profile of the weapon, which is the same as the mercenary, then you're going to struggle. And this is the same really with all carbines that boast to be long range, is that snipers can kill you in one hit. And if you're taking time to aim and you're using longer scopes and you're having to concentrate your fire, you're going to be such a target for a sniper to take that one headshot on you. And similarly, if you're firing at an enemy heavy, all they've got to do is hit that heavy shield up and then they'll just fire back at you. So unless you are in a position where they just don't expect you and you're going to have the drop, then you're not going to have the advantage in fights, and I just don't see the point. And the amount of muzzle velocity added is about 50 over the mercenary just doesn't seem enough, or it just doesn't work in practice. The negatives of losing 50 rate of fire are really noticeable in close and closer middle ranges, where you are obviously at a disadvantage because the enemies are using faster firing weapons, and unless you have the drop and unless you aim perfectly, you're going to lose these engagements. And most fights take place in this sort of middle to close range, and if there are long range fights, as I've said before, there are other classes that dominate them, the heavy and the light assault, or even vehicles that are just going to be not your friends. And furthermore, even playing to its strengths, being at further away distances where you won't be expected by the players, like those radio towers, can be done with most other carbines. The mercenary and the Fortuna are just as competent, as your priorities are usually still targets. Like when you're on top of a radio tower, you aren't trying to hit those moving targets, you're going for people that are standing still and you're going for headshots. But after I swapped over after my Auraxium, I just thought, well, the Fortuna's just as good at doing this. I just don't see the point of using the Razor GD-23. So I just don't think the specialization of the weapon being long range is to a point where I take that over the versatility of the mercenary, which is free. It doesn't have a sur cost, it just comes straight out of the packet when you load up the game. And even though it does have its little perks like having a quicker reload time, it just isn't enough. And also, the gun just doesn't have any character. It's not punchy like the ACX-11 or like rapid like the GD-7F. Both of these guns have a lot of character to them and you feel like you're using a different weapon, something completely non-normal, whereas the mercenary feels like it's a weapon that's reliable and normal. It just doesn't have too much character, it's just like the staple weapon. The Razor GD-23 is like the mercenary but with a very slightly different model, and that's another thing. It just doesn't look different enough either. It's bland. It looks like the mercenary. It doesn't really have any character, whereas the GD-7F has that little underbarrel sort of holder thing. However, the only place where it has a bit of an advantage is that it's called the Razor. And when you kill somebody with a razor, that sounds very dangerous. In conclusion, no, I wouldn't recommend the Razor GD-23 unless you were doing what I was doing and trying to Auraxium all of your weapons for the directive to get the Fortuna, which is a very nice gun by the way, and it's very fun to be able to switch between the shotgun and the carbine and to be much more versatile than you would be with the mercenary, with only very little downsides, like a slightly slower muzzle velocity than even the mercenary and a worse hip fire. And I really don't usually like shotguns, but having the option is a lot different to using the shotgun full time. Anyway, what does everyone else think? Does anyone have a different opinion? Please do have a discussion in the comments below and I will be sure to get involved with it. I have Auraxiumed a lot of weapons, especially on the VS, so if anyone wants to request a weapon to do like a post-Auraxium review where it's less about the stats and more about the feeling of the weapon and the thoughts after you've had these thousands of kills with it, and you know, that sort of more instinctual feeling you get when you've been using the weapon. If you enjoyed the video, you can always hit that thumbs up button, and if you really want to, hit that subscribe button that's above. I'll be sure to see you next time, everybody. Joshino.